While the Gaza theater was lit up, our executive producer, Jeff Fager, had the intelligent idea of sending us to the West Bank, which wasn't getting any attention at all. But the West Bank is the main battlefront, the main theater for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And what we were going there to see is whether in fact peace was possible, or whether history had passed peace by. The solution for the West Bank problem, the West Bank-Israel problem, has always been, or has been for many, many decades now, a two-state solution. Israel on one side, Palestine, West Bank on the other side. And the question was whether this is still possible or whether it's just inconceivable by now.
And you think what?
I think history has passed it by. I think mainly because the Israelis have sent so many settlers, so many Jewish Israeli settlers to the West Bank. There are now close to 300,000 of them. That removing these settlers, which has to be done for the Palestinians,
politically not viable in Israel.
Is not politically viable and is not militarily viable. The radical settlers are convinced that if the army would ever be sent in to evacuate settlers, first of all, the government would fall within a day, which I think is probably true. And second, if the army went in, so many of the soldiers now are religious guys that the army would break apart.
But would it have been possible, and this is not fair, and it's an unfair question and can't be answered, but nevertheless, suppose it was Prime Minister Rabin or Prime Minister Sharon. A different answer?
I was so sentimentally attached to Prime Minister Rabin that I think that anything might have been possible with Rabin, which is why he was killed.
You used to live in Tel Aviv, did you?
Yes.
So of all your friends in Israel, where you lived for how many years?
Oh, altogether more than 10.
So for all your friends there, if you would say to them, would you say to them the building of the settlements in the West Bank was a bad idea and not in your interest?
They would say, of course, and then change the topic of conversation.
I don't understand.
In places like Tel Aviv, where just about everyone is for peace and against settlements, the irony is when you go to a dinner party in Tel Aviv, everything is discussed except politics. Family, friends, movies, theater, music, everything.
Right.
Vacations,
business,
Tuscany,
right.
You name it, it's discussed. But not the politics of the situation. There is...
Because they're just tired of it, or because they know it, there is no light at the end of the tunnel?
Because they're tired of it, and because they're in a state of denial. They're living a very good life. The life in Tel Aviv is a wonderful life, and they don't want to be bothered with these questions which don't really have an answer.
1 month after 9/11, he joined me again for a conversation about how that event had changed the world.
I get very nervous when I hear the rhetoric out of Washington these days about winning the war on terrorism, about victory. I understand the need for rhetoric in times like this, but I think it raises false expectations. I don't know of anyone who's won a war against terrorism. The Israelis, who are so much better equipped at this point to fight it than we are, who are perfectly prepared to use draconian measures which we haven't begun to imagine yet, and who have infiltrated every terrorist organization which fights them, which bombs them. They can't make it stop. There were 30 suicide bombings against Israelis in the last year. The British have been trying to get it out of Northern Ireland now since 1969. No way. The French, who systematically used torture to eliminate the FLN, the liberation movement against French rule, in Algeria in 1957. They won the Battle of Algiers by torturing everyone they caught and getting all the information they had. And the FLN, incidentally, had a cell structure which is very similar